What's going on, Jets fans? Welcome to the latest edition of Jets Latest, where you get the latest on the Jets, Jets. I'm your host, the spitting statistician, Dane Martinez, and today on Jets Latest, we talk about a couple Jets that, ironically, we haven't actually talked much about so far in these episodes. I mean, in the wide receiver position, I have been saying most of the time that it's going to wind up being Garrett Wilson. Now they've brought in Tyler Johnson, they've brought in Josh Reynolds, there is the third-round pick from last year, Malachi Corley, and I think that they're going to draft another young wide receiver coming up later this month. But that is forgetting about Allen Lazard. And Allen Lazard actually, a few months ago, he was given permission to seek a trade, right? And there was just no takers, right? So it's always been assumed that the Jets were going to move his contract, move his salary, and that he would not be on the roster for the actual season of 2025. Why? Because really, he was Aaron Rodgers' boy. He was one of the guys that Aaron Rodgers probably asked the previous regime to bring in, and they signed him to an $11 million a year deal. And I thought there was no chance they were going to keep him on the books for that. But recently, Darren Mosey said that they hope to keep Allen Lazard on the roster, but at a restructured contract. Now, I want to explore if this is actually true or if this is part of smokescreen season, like I am saying, running up to the NFL draft. Like, he caught 37 balls last year, 530 yards, and 6 touchdowns, right? That is not worth $11 million. Maybe it is worth a lower deal, but remember, the Jets signed Josh Reynolds to $5 million. They're going to be able to get that kind of production or better for $5 million. They can actually save $6.6 million if they cut Allen Lazard, okay? And here's the thing. I've been saying it all the time. Follow the money. If they do cut or trade Allen Lazard, then I definitely think they're going to wind up with a second, third, fourth round pick at the wide receiver position. But if this draft happens later in the month, right, and they wind up going with the offensive lineman Membu or Campbell, like I say, in round 1, if they wind up getting, say, Mason Taylor, the tight end out of LSU, in round 2, if they then wind up getting a safety and a defensive lineman and other needs on the defensive side of the ball, then just maybe they will actually keep Allen Lazard on the roster. When it's all said and done, bottom line, I think this is part of smoke screen season, and I do not think the Jets and Mosey actually think they're going to keep Lazard on the roster. If anything, I do think they're going to make him one of those post-June 1st kind of cuts, save some of the cap hit. But here's the deal. Right now, they can't give up that leverage. They can't make it known to every other team in the NFL that they actually want to move on from Allen Lazard, because then they ain't going to get anything back. They want to make it seem like they want to keep Lazard, because then maybe they can get a little something back. Ultimately, I think this is a smokescreen, and regardless of what is said by Mosey or others, Aaron Glenn's out there talking, I don't think Lazard is going to be on this roster come the first week of the actual games of 2025, all right? Because at $11 million, it's just not worth it. And they can save more money if they just cut him and go ahead and actually just draft someone else, because they have their top wide receivers. Quite frankly, it's Garrett Wilson, Tyler Johnson, Josh Reynolds, and maybe an ascending Malachi Corley. And the fact that he was granted permission to seek a trade really gives you all that you need to know about Allen Lazard. However, someone who is definitively going to be on the roster is Breece Hall. Breece Lightning, I call him. And listen, I think he is a stud running back. However, this day and age, there are very few workhorse backs. Listen to what Aaron Glenn had to say about not only Breece Hall, but the Jets' entire running back room. He goes, "We have 3 running backs on this team that we're going to utilize as much as possible. They're all big men, they're violent, they're physical. I think every player is going to be happy with the way we go about this offense. We want to be a violent, tough, physical football team, and these men are violent runners, so they're going to take advantage of that." Now, here's the deal. Breece Hall is a stud running back. He was only 24 years old this season. He had 876 yards and 5 touchdowns, and he caught 57 balls for 483 yards and 3 touchdowns, and people thought that was a down year, okay? If you can have a down year with 1,359 scrimmage yards and 8 touchdowns, you know you are pretty good. He was 22nd in the league in rushing, which may not seem great, but He was fourth in the league in receiving yards among running backs. So he was still that receiving threat out of the backfield, right? Tied for 10th in the NFL with 2.9 yards per carry after contact. He had 12% of his runs that were quote unquote explosive, which went for over 10 yards. And he was ninth among running backs with 600 yards. With those kind of explosive carries. So he can still break the big one. He is still a very good running back. People thought it was a down year. Why? Because going into last year in the fantasy world, he was literally going as like the third overall pick, the second or third overall running back behind only Christian McCaffrey. So people thought it was kind of a down year after he had 1,585 scrimmage yards and 9 touchdowns in 2023. But he was still something of a workhorse. He had 66% of the snaps. He had 57% of the carries that the New York Jets had. But honestly, I think what Aaron Glenn is saying is that moving forward, Breece Hall is not alone. Remember, they had Braylon Allen, who they drafted last year in the 4th round, and he was only 20 years old last year. He was the youngest player in the entire NFL, and he flashed at times. He had 334 rushing yards. He had 2 touchdowns, and he has a little bit of a different style. Remember, Aaron Glenn just said he likes these big, physical running backs. They want to be violent, and Braylon Allen was that. He is 235 pounds compared to Breece Hall's 217 pounds, and they just drafted him in the 4th round last year. He was only 20 years old last year. He's going to be 21 years old this year. And then also, don't forget about Davis, okay? Another draft pick of last year in the 5th round. He is only 23 years old. He actually had 5.8 yards a carry, and he flashed in late season games against Buffalo and Miami. So I agree that they have 3 good running backs, and they're going to use them all. Breece Hall is still one of the better running backs in the National Football League, and we're going to love what they do with him. But let's put it this way. For fantasy, maybe it's not going to be that as great because I do believe the snap share and the attempt share will be a little bit lower. I believe, Aaron Glenn, that they're going to use all 3 backs and that they like all 3 backs. Now, when I just said Hall is 24. Braylon Allen was 20 last year, going to be 21 years old. Davis was 23 years old. That just continues the trend that we have been talking about here on Jets Latest, and it is intentional for the new brain trust of Aaron Glenn and Darren Mosey. Check out what Darren Mosey had to say about this, about the youth movement being absolutely a purposeful focus for the Jets in free agency. He says, absolutely, it was an emphasis going into free agency. We wanted to stay young, kind of focus on second contract players. Staying young was an emphasis, and we were able to do that. All right, so listen, we've been saying it on Jets Latest a ton. They wanted to get younger, and they absolutely did. Josh Reynolds, who they signed last week, was the only free agent they signed that was 30 years old or above, and he was 30 years old, right? There is literally hardly any players on this Jets roster that are 30 years old or more. It's literally Josh Reynolds, who they signed, Tyrod Taylor, the backup quarterback, and then the special teamers, the long snapper, the punter, and the kicker, Greg Zuerlein. And even the punter, remember, they brought in McNamara as a free agent to give Morstead some competition. So they are definitely bringing in young guys. That is what they want, and it was a focus, and Mosey kind of confirmed that to reporters over the last week at owners meetings. So that's what I think is going on here. I do not think Lazard is going to be on this roster, but they have to talk like they want him just so that they don't lose all of their leverage. Breece Hall is still a stud. He is a stud running back, but he may be part of a committee along with Allen and Davis in 2025. And when you got 3 running backs that are 24 years or younger, it is certainly part of the trend here of this youth movement for the Jets. So do not get twisted. They're not going to bring in some big name wide receiver that is over 30. They're not going to go fishing in the pond for the running backs like a Nick Chubb who is still out there or others. They are happy with this youth movement, and they are going to have it on the offensive side of the ball, keyed by their free agent signing at quarterback, 26-year-old Justin Fields. So keep an eye out on this. I don't think they are moving Lazard now. I think they are going to wind up cutting him. But if they do, keep him on the roster, you will be able to kind of get inklings of that if they eschew the idea of drafting a wide receiver, because I've always thought they're going to complete the wide receiver room with a wide receiver in the draft, not Ted McMillan or Golden or Booga or anybody like that up high, but maybe a second, third, or fourth round pick. If they don't do that, maybe there is a chance for a restructured contract for Alan Lazard, and that would still complete a relatively decent wide receiver room. That'll do it for this episode of Jets Latest. Please remember, like this video, subscribe to the channel, okay? Tell a Jets fan friend to tell a Jets fan friend. Feel free to engage with me in the comments and hit me up on social media. I am on X at Spittin' Speeds. I will be happy to answer your questions and talk to you more about the Jets, Jets. And don't forget, I am also the host of the FTN Fantasy Show over on SiriusXM Channel 87, the Fantasy Channel, where we talk not just about the Jets, not just about football, but fantasy football, fantasy baseball, March Madness going on, the NBA playoffs on the horizon. We have got you covered. FTN is a great website, data, tools for fantasy and betting to help you win your leagues and win that cash. But right here on Jets Latest, I will be back every single day, giving you the updates, giving you what you need to know about the Jets. Jets. It is an exciting time. Let's see what they do to complete the puzzle later on this month at the NFL Draft. We'll be here to talk about it tomorrow. But until then, this is another episode of Jets Latest in the books. We out of here. Peace.